Welcome to another episode of Six Figure Secrets for Fractional Experts. My name is Bradley Jacobs. I'm your host today, founder and CEO of Mylance. Today, I have Nate Green on the show. Nate, welcome.
Appreciate it, Bradley.
So Nate is an award-winning entrepreneur, best-selling author, and leadership coach, was a former police officer turned CEO, had an 8-figure exit, Inc. 5,000 honors 4 years in a row. There's a hell of a lot there. So excited to have you on the pod. I know there's a lot longer of an intro that I'm going to really let you share. What did I miss? Like, what's the next few sentences of that are the most important for the rest of this conversation?
I think the most important part is just walking through in the journey. The journey has been filled full of some great successes, which is awesome. And I love those pieces. But there's a lot of the hardships, and that's where I feel like so many people talk about all those glory reels. And I prefer being the reels, talking about, the heart failure, the paralysis, the rough divorce, walking through, the sleepless nights, the panic attacks, the tough moments, and really hitting your head against the wall over and over again, but then rebounding and constantly coming back and being relentless and never giving up on the journey, because I don't want to just talk about my successes. I want to talk about my difficulties, because I really feel like that's what people find the encouragement from, is through those moments.
These hardships, they're not small things that you just mentioned. You went through a long list. Each one of them was significant, right? And you add them all up, and they're intense and they're big and they're challenging, right? There's just no way around it. What is the mindset required to see those maybe as a blessing, or see the value in the hardships so that you're able to, maybe I asked a biased question there. What is the mindset required to move past those hardships?
In those moments, it's really hard. You can't see the fruits that come from the challenge in those moments. I think for me, I've always told myself that my life is bigger than this. And whatever it is, my life is bigger than this. It's meant to be more than this. I will not be defined by heart failure. I will not be defined by divorce. I will not be defined by X, Y, Z. I'm going to be defined by what I choose to do with it on the backside. And so reminding yourself in those hardships, my life is not defined by this, I think is something that really kept me motivated during the storms, and constantly realize that I have the ability post-storm to write the script and write the outcome. And that kept me driven and motivated towards the bigger vision, the bigger version of who I was built and being built to become.
Along that thread, right, one of the most interesting questions is about success. And everyone has a different definition of what success looks like. I'm curious about yours. Like, what does success look like to you?
I'll be honest with you. What success looks like to me is nothing that you read. Nothing that I define my success in and about and for. That's all still on my journey. That's my lighthouse. That's where my goal is to impact millions of people by giving them hope and helping them break free from their holdbacks. And I only hope and pray that my story, these little nuggets that have happened, these little successes and the failures and the rebounds, that this is just all a part of that journey that leads me to be able to help people break free and really chase after their future and really find what they consider success. So, success to me, man, that's in process, and man, it is bigger than I can even explain in this moment.
I love it. So many people be like, success is when I have $10 million in the bank, or when I have this family, or when I have the ability to travel to, wherever, Southeast Asia, and it's really about the journey. I'm not even sure that there's really a there.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I don't think so, because, I call it missions to millions. I want to impact millions of people. But what happens when I get to millions? Will that be enough? And I would probably say, knowing my personality, every goal I've ever set that I've hit, I've always set a bigger and more ridiculous goal on the backside of that. So, I think it comes down to, what God blesses me with in the journey. I think with severe hardship comes a severe capabilities to connect and relate to people in different phases of their life, which give you the ability to impact them on their journey. So I feel like I've been in the trenches, and I feel like God has blessed me with a killer resume, which is great. And so if that opens the doors, amazing. But for me, like, people talk to me and they're like, hey man, like, what do you do? And I'm like, half the time I just tell people I'm a chief janitor. Because like sometimes it's funny because like that's what I do my entire life is clean up messes, whether it's my mess or somebody else's mess. So if I'm on a cruise ship, I don't tell people really what I do unless I really want to get into what I do and work through that. I just tell them I'm chief janitor because like for me, it's not about what I do. It's more a matter of who I am. And if I can't impact you as a chief janitor, if I can't impact you as a lunch man, whatever it is, then none of that matters. Now, my story is my story, and I do like talking about it to people as like giving them hope. But, just for instance, like what I've done does not define me. It's how I show up today and then how I show up tomorrow and how many lives I can change in the process.
The sentence, it's not about what I do, it's who I am. It's probably one of the most powerful frames I think that's ever been said on this podcast, at least. Go tell us more. Like, I don't want to oversee that one or miss that one. Like, that is gold. So talk about that.
So in my life, there's been a lot of identities that I've held. And so, talk about let's take Nate at 15. My identity at 15 was my parents were incredible. My older brother was relentless. He was, about 5 years older than me, bigger, stronger, faster, beat me tremendously from probably, 11 years old till 15 years old. And so who I was at 15 was somebody that lacked hope. I lacked a vision. I lacked that potential, or at least what I could see because I'd been beat down for so many years. And so if I clung to that identity, then where would I have gone next? And then you're talking about my identity as a cop. Well, I mean, yeah, like I felt like I had overcome these obstacles and I wanted to help people and want to change lives and do all this. And that's how I could see it. But then if my identity was completely tied up in being a cop, which for a season it was, then what happens when you have heart failure and you can no longer be a cop? What happens when your identity is tied to being a husband and the marriage falls apart? What happens when your identity is tied to being a CEO of a specific business and you either change or you sell, a part of your identity is gone? See, that's what a part of relinquishing part of my identity to be about who I am and who I'm built to be rather than the roles, the positions, the situations that I am in. It helps it where you don't identify yourself as a failure when you're in the moment of a failure. And so it's not just the good stuff. It's how easy is it for us to define ourselves and have the identity connected to moments in time. And without that, it separates you from it in a way that you can learn from it, grow from it, and make yourself better, make your identity better because of no matter what's going on over here. It's a separation between circumstances, situations, positions, and who you are.
So all to say, let's say, my business fails, right? And we shut the whole thing down, whatever it is. I am not my business. I am not a failure, right? Is that basically the distinction? It's like, okay, the business 100%. I was running no longer exists. I wouldn't even necessarily call that a failure. To be honest, right? I don't even know if I like the term failure, right? It was an experience. Yeah. It was a learning. It was a path on the journey, 100%. Whatever it is. But I'm not a failure. Certainly. I learned a million things. I helped a lot of people. The business maybe not have hit the goal that I wanted it to hit.
Yep.
Is that, would you change anything about that frame?
No, not at all. Because here's the thing is failure to me is connected to feelings. Because people feel like a failure. Now it's up to you what you do with it. And so if we said, hey, listen, I don't believe in failures, then what do you do with the feeling that you're a failure? Because you're going to feel like you're a failure in moments, whether you want to accept something as a failure or not. But when you accept something as a failure, then you can reframe it into a learning experience. But first you have to accept the situation that connects with the emotion to then be able to reframe it into something else. If you don't do the first, then you're basically like putting lipstick on a pig and you're saying, you're always saying that. And versus if you just connect it, like your friends might know that one business didn't succeed, which means it failed. And so like, hey guys, listen, like I have failures. I've learned from my failures and it's incredible what I can do on the backside But none of that, my successes nor my failures define me. And so when you look at that, because you could be at the top of the pinnacle of your success career with a business, but you might be an alcoholic and you might have spent all your money on drugs and addiction. And to everybody else, you might be a success over here, but really in life, you're a failure, or at least in that moment, and you're failing. And so that's really where, like, when you start defining and identifying based upon circumstances, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make. And so then what they do is sometimes even create false realities that they're living in, such as social media. We see it all the time. Like people, man, I'm here. I've done this. Look at me, look at me, look at me. And really, in their real life, they haven't done half of that. They're just claiming it. And it's just what they can get people to believe. So they like and follow them. So like there's all these things that we have to really work on. And that's where social media can't be our identity. We have to be true and concise about who we are and what we're built for. And then that's where our identity sits.
Something I've thought about a lot is how do I avoid probably a very common outcome where the very successful entrepreneur is incredibly unfulfilled, right? Like, let's say you get to it there. Let's just say you sell your business for 100 million, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Like you hit your financial goals, maybe you have a family, maybe you don't, it doesn't matter, right? You have the things that people generally define as that's the good route. And so many of those people are totally unhappy, unfulfilled, miserable. How do you avoid that?
Well, there's two sides of it. I think the people that are driven and motivated, the people that are really chasing the best version of themselves, are not settled with a certain achievement. Like the resume that you read off of me, like that intro, like that, and I'm just getting started. Like that's just like, okay, cool. That's awesome. But I have to live with myself every day. And I'm not settled in that. Just because I could sit on a beach and smoke a cigar every day doesn't mean I should. And that's not what I'm built to do. And so I think there's these obligatory sides that we really have to confront about being true to ourselves. And you gotta, I call it the inner 2-year-old. You always have to ask why behind everything. Great. You want to have a Lamborghini STO. They're incredible. I love performance vehicles. Once you get it, why did you want it? You didn't want it because it was just a cool vehicle. You probably wanted it, not saying you, but in general, like maybe it's the attention side of the coin. Maybe for me, I love fast cars, and I buy fast cars because I love sitting behind it and feeling that power. I love that adrenaline dump. That's because I was on SWAT narcotics. Like I did the fun stuff. And so I miss adrenaline dumps. So if I get on the motorcycle, if I get in a fast car, and if I can rip it as fast as possible, I'm not going to tell you how fast I go, but if I rip it and run it a little bit when everybody else is like freaking out, I'm like, I love this. Why? Because, maybe a few screws are loose up there. But, in that process, like what is the why behind it? But the problem is for a lot of people, they want the flashy things. They want the success. They want certain things that appear successful to get a certain feeling out of it or a certain attention out of it. So the problem is when somebody is quasi-successful, they're buying things as if maybe they were this successful. And the problem is they're creating a false reality, but they're already getting those dopamine hits. And so then it's like you're chasing your tail. And so when you're actually successful, you can't go do the things that you already faked before. And so like there's this issue versus when somebody's really successful and they're really chasing that future, that's the greatest version of what they can become and what they can achieve with the greatest version that they can become. It is endless. And I think that is the key, is being aware that you're not chasing a rainbow. You're not chasing a specific outcome. You're chasing a betterment of you and achievements based upon the betterment of you and what it can go after, while keeping the right boundaries in place so you don't burn the bridge with your family. You don't go off and chase all this alcohol and addiction, like all these other pieces. Boundaries are the key in your life, and making sure that you actually find yourself in a moment where you can actually be satisfied is a bad word, but you can be connected to your successes and be like, man, like this is cool. I love my family. I love what's going on. I love my relationships. I love what I've done, but I'm still hungry and we still running. And there's that balance that you got to really deal with in our heads, is learning how to take the breaks, enjoy the breaks, take the time, enjoy the time, and really go after this better future in a healthy way, and really going after it where, we're always going to be a little unbalanced, but with the right boundaries.
To me, it does come back to what you said about it's who I'm being every day. Because if I'm focused on who I'm being every day versus what I'm doing every day, the doing, the numbers, the outcome, the this, it's not really the focus. Like, yes, we all have goals. I think goals are healthy, but if I'm focused on, let's say, delivering value, being in service, being a loving, kind, genuine, trustworthy, hardworking, disciplined person, there's no there in that, right? It's a constant practice every day. And then if I'm those things with a clear vision, I'm going to hit my goals. I'm going to build a really fulfilling, beautiful life.
100%. And like in my businesses, my modus operandi, my theme has always been people first, money will come.
Yeah.
And when you care about people and you go beyond the dollar signs, that helps you sleep really well at night. That helps where down the road, you have a bunch of advocates in your corner. You have a bunch of people that actually care about you, and you're doing something to really impact their lives in the process, whether it is the financial services, whether it's, whatever you're doing, whether you're a content creator. Focus on impacting lives in the process. Don't focus on how much money you can get, what kind of deals you can get. No, focus on what can you do to help people in their lives, in their moments of need. What can you do to give hope and inspiration and impact them in some kind of way?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I want to talk about your book. Your book is called Suck Less, Do Better. So concise, so punchy. How did you come up with the title?
So the title, and me and my wife talk about this a lot. It's very sarcastic. We were actually walking last night, and I told her, I said, the problem with that title is, like, if you meet somebody in, let's say, Starbucks, and you're talking, they're like, hey, listen, here's a copy of my book. They're like, thanks, jerk. But, we were laughing about that. And I'm like, it takes a little bit longer to kind of give the background behind it before you just be like, yeah, suck less, do better, fool. And so where that term came from, suck less, do better, it came about 13 years ago, maybe 14 years ago. And the problem is when I started my first business, you naturally connect with other entrepreneurs. And so then you start seeing what they're doing, and you start seeing their success levels, and you start worrying about, how does this compare? And wait a second. Then you get a little derailed, and then you start working through the process. And next thing you know, you got to realize you got to put these severe boundaries. I got to stop worrying about everybody else. I got to work on my plan. Where am I going? Because I'm chasing after my life, not their lives. I'm going after my future, not their future. And so the term suck less, do better is forget about everybody else. Don't compare. Cut out the noise of what's going on in everybody else's life. Figure out who you are, what you're built for, what are the goals you're chasing after, and then how can you do it better today? Compare yourself from how you showed up yesterday. Suck less, do better today. And every single day, just that momentum of just like, hey, better than I was yesterday, better than I was yesterday. Suck less, do better, suck less, do better, suck less, do better, day in, day out. That's how the concept came in. And then when a publisher reached out to me about writing a book, I was like, I got a title. I'm not sure if you're going to like it. And so I pitched them the title and the concept, and funny enough, they loved it. So
why do you think they loved it?
It had that edge. It had a little bit of a different spin on it. And then inside the book, it's basically a roadmap that works on eliminating a lot of holdbacks for entrepreneurs, everywhere from cracked lenses of how we can't see ourselves for who we really are because of our childhood, our past, and all these things that really affect. It's called cognitive biases. It creates these cognitive biases on how we see even our opportunities and our future. And those create what's called automoticities. Not trying to get too nerd on you, but automoticities are automatic responses. And so what goes on is, next thing you know, our life is built off of all these automatic responses that keep us inside of a box, or keeps us inside of this one arena, or moving only in so many different directions. And so what happens, we have to break free from that stuff. We have to acknowledge them, reframe them, and really help ourselves move forward. And that's where the book, diving into those pieces, diving into, the noises that surround us. Wait a second. What is your lighthouse? How can you be chasing down the thing? Like, what is your lighthouse? Why is it there? And then who are you really? How long have you spent getting to know your greatest asset, which is you? And so putting all these pieces in place to really create a framework, or this nice roadmap for people to really understand how to break free from these limitations and really go after a better future.
There's an element for me around so many titles of books in this category are somewhat nice in their title, right? Like, do the hard thing, or say no more. I'm making it up, but they're kind of like kind ways of saying what you're saying so directly, poignantly, right? Like, just suck less.
Just suck less, do better.
Right,
that's
right.
it.
It's very catchy in a way, and I think that's why your publisher, I guess, liked it. It's just different. It stands out, and it's edgy, and standout edgy is great. It's amazing marketing,
appreciate it.
Right? So
yeah, it's exciting. Now the great news is I do have a second book that is coming out probably around August of this year, and maybe August, September, and this one's a little bit softer. And this one's called "Cracked Lenses Breed Broken Dreams." And so this one is going to be really focusing on the dreams that we don't chase after, the dreams that we really should, the dreams that we've let go, and maybe even the dreams that you never knew were yours. And how do you really chase after this future that you have the capabilities at your fingertips to go after, but yet you're letting all these things derail your process and derail your progress, and you're never going after it. So I'm really excited about that. That one's a softer title, so I can actually hand it out at a coffee shop without having to give a 10-minute disclaimer.
I love it. Well, it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man.
You have a mastermind called Built Unstoppable. Tell us about that. And, you mentioned about a process that people really work through in that mastermind. Tell us about that process.
Yeah, so the mastermind, this is probably one of my most exciting processes, my most exciting project that we have going on, because inside of this, we walk people through a journey. And I think the first part is this major self-discovery journey where they really figure out the core of who they are. They really figure out what are they built for? Like, what is the skill sets, the capabilities? We have them do career tests, cognitive tests, personality tests, you name it. We have them do so many different things so that they can really see themselves on paper. And then we have them create what's called the display like a trophy. Think about like in a cabinet, there's all these lights that shine the lights on all the greatest attributes. Same thing in this program. We have them list out, and some people even name it different things. Like, yeah, this is John. This paperwork's all John. I don't care what you do. Like, name it all. Then that way you can see all these skill sets on paper, and then you can start realizing what is the greatest version of what that person should be able to become. And then when you start looking at it that way, that really helps you understand who you are and your capabilities. Then we focus on the fuel. What is your driving force? What are those things that keep you hungry, motivated, driven? And we work through all these things, even going into people's basements, which is where some trauma sits, some past difficulties, hardships, stuff that they really don't want to talk about. We dive in there to really try to figure out that fuel system for them. And then we have them set their lighthouse, which is that end goal of, like, I call it their deathbed goal. What does that look like? What do you want to achieve in your life? And then from there, we start working through all their limitations, the noise that's distracting them, the different focuses, and what are the actions they need to take? And also, what are the corner that they need to have? Like the people around them, what does that look like? So we take them through this entire process. And by the time we're done with this 12-week intensive program, we've had people that have restored marriages. We've had people that have sold businesses. We have people that have shut down businesses they were launching because it was no longer in line with where they were going. We've had people make complete changes in life. Even one gentleman that was like, Nate, I've been living the last 30 years as my father, and I am not my dad. And so all these things, all these expectations and everything that his parents put on him, and we finally helped him break free from all that. And he's literally selling his business and chasing after a completely different future. And he's 50 years old. Imagine that. Complete change at 50.
Love it.
So it's exciting. And actually right now we are working on, and we're finalizing what we call Built Unstoppable Teams. And this is for the corporate environment. And it's an adjustment of that program for the corporate teams to really walk teams through how to become the best inside of that. How do you connect with who you are? And where does this business that you're working in fit in line with your lighthouse? And then we start working through that and really help teams become higher performers.
I'm such a big believer in mindset to be successful. Like without the right mindset, and right is the judgment, but without some kind of a different mindset, that's required. So in your mind, it sounds like you have some strategies and processes to help people use their mind to get in the right headspace for success. Would love to hear about some of those.
Yeah, I agree with you. Mindset is key. And a lot of times people really focus on I am statements. And that's great. One thing is I am statements, you actually have to have some kind of realm of belief in there. So I could be like, I am 6'5", and no, I'm not. I'm going to be a pro football. I'm 5'9". I'm not going to be a pro football player. Like you have to be able to have it within reason because our minds have a BS meter. We know what's true and what's potential. So I think the biggest thing with mindsets is we can have great mindsets for how we're going to show up daily. Whether it's standards, whether it's principles, we can have that process. But I think the most important thing is eliminating the wrong mindsets. And I think that is the key. So many people try to set the right mindsets and then they start running forward, but they've got 10 parachutes on their back. What are the parachutes? Limiting beliefs. What are the parachutes? Fears, insecurities. Wait a second. It's things that my parents told me. I use my dad as an example. He's an incredible, incredible father. But he implemented and basically told us over and over again how it's so important to have a pension or retirement, that we need to get a job or a career that has a pension or retirement. And so that's part of why I went into law enforcement. That, and I'm an adrenaline junkie. So a little bit of that stuff. But then when I went to start my first business, he said, Nate, I think that you should probably go get a job that has a pension retirement. He tried to say, hey, listen, let's go this more protective. And I love my dad for it, but that was a big resistance that I had to fight through in my first year of business. Every time I hit a hiccup, every time I almost failed, like so close to failing. You know how many times I was like, oh man, I should just go get a job, because that's what was ingrained in me. So part of it is reframing some of these things that were told to us, past relationships that maybe we had a spouse or a girlfriend, a boyfriend that maybe said some very rude, mean things. In my case, my older brother, like we all got these things in our past. You're always going to fail. You're going to suck. Trust me, I was not on the top 10 list of most likely to succeed. I was on other lists. I don't want to talk about that. But, we can, when you push through it, you got to release that stuff, because you can have as much positive mindset about your future, which is incredible. But you have to also know what mindsets to let go and reframe so they don't become those parachutes holding you from chasing after the right goals, the right ambitions, and even the right frame of mind.
Yeah. Wow. So much there. I really appreciate that, Nate. Tell us about going from a police officer to being your own boss, running your own company. I mean, what are some of the biggest lessons and takeaways from that like crazy transition?
Yeah, with heart failure at 23 and having to make that adjustment, I mean, I went into a very weird mode. Even I'll be honest with you, like extreme depression right after that. It was a very tough time. And looking back, there's so many things I could have done better. One thing is I should have actually taken unemployment for a little bit and like taken some time to breathe and to set my foundation better, which I didn't. I literally was like immediately like, I ain't gonna take nothing. I don't need nobody. I'll go figure it out, bootstraps kind of guy, and so that was tough. The planning, I think the planning is key, is setting the trajectory past now, going back to, this doesn't define me. That thing is like, you're always trying to like put back the puzzle piece, put it all back in a box to make it okay. And then you make the decision to jump off a cliff, basically, as an entrepreneur. And this was about a year post law enforcement. And in there, you're still trying to figure out your identity. And I tell you what, it was a tough turn, a tough process. And that's where I had to live beyond today. So many times, man, like with all realness, there was some of the darkest of days during that season of my life. And, it's only by the grace of God that I made it through. I'll be honest with you. He gave me some hope inside of some utter darkness that, man, I don't even know looking back, when I talk about those times, it was very tough. And then, taking on the adventure of, building a business, and that first business back in 2008 is the business that ended up being sold last year for 8 figures. And I'll be honest with you, once again, it was only by the grace of God that it took off and that it kept on going. And obviously a lot of hard work, but God gave me clarity, gave me vision, and really helped me keep my heart right with people first, money will come mentality, and just impress the right people around me and the right things on my heart through the seasons.
Yeah. Wow. The people first, money later. Tell us more about that. What does that really mean?
So that came from an old guy in Starbucks. My first 6 months to a year, I call those Starbucks days. Before I had my first office, I think I got my first office at 8 months deep. And it was just always focusing on, going there, getting out of the house because I get a little stir crazy if I'm by myself for too long. So me and this old dude, just what a nice guy. He was in his late 70s, early 80s. And one day as he was leaving, he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, Nate, focus on people. You don't have to worry about the rest. And I was like, man, okay. So I went back to my mission statement, and I had this mission statement all written out, and I basically just scratched it out. And I was like, people first, money will come. And it's all about making sure that if Bradley's in front of me, and yeah, I might be able to charge him extra, but he's going through some life stuff. Let me take care of him. Let me spend a little more time with him. Let me find out about his life, not just about, financial stuff. Let me figure out man, how you really doing, man? I see you're a little rough. You're a little different today. What's going on? You care a little bit more. You go the extra mile. You don't always charge what you can. Just because you could doesn't mean you should, and it requires sacrifice in so many different ways, time, sometimes monetarily. But guess what? The business that I started in 2008 grew, Inc. 5000, 4 years in a row, $0 spent in advertising. We were 100% referral base.
Wow.
People first, money will come.
Wow. What was the business, Nate?
It was all inside the financial spaces, tax, accounting, bookkeeping.
Okay. And who was your customer in that business?
Entrepreneurs.
Early stage startups, or was it more like SMBs, or just everybody?
The whole spread. We didn't do publicly traded. It was all, right. your small guys, all the way up to, $100 million. So the whole spread. Obviously early on, it was whoever could pay, whoever that needed help. And then as you grow, you could be able to work through the process. The great part about, referral base is, we were based in Lake Mary, Florida, which is by Orlando. And we had clients in other countries all over the nation. You name it. We got some kind of niche inside of the digital space. And so everywhere from, affiliate marketers all the way through content creators, you name it. We had clients all over, and partnerships, and, a lot of great clients, a lot of great business owners.
What are you most excited about today? And, maybe over the next 12 months, what, I know you're writing and you're working these masterminds and all these things, but what's really top of mind for you?
I would say that the biggest thing for me is in the last 5 months, I really became extremely dialed in as to what I want to be known for. And I know that is kind of goofy. But for me, your vision, your future, your life, every single thing has to really amount to something. And I don't want to be the guy that made a lot of money. I mean, cool. If I make a lot of money, that's cool, but that's not how I want to be known. And so, it took me a long time to really find that heartstring of what do I want? And that's what inspired this next book is I want to be the guy that helps people break free. And that's, to me, it's, these limiting beliefs, man, I struggle with them my whole life of am I really good enough? Do I really deserve this? Even things, I'll give you a funny joke. Imagine the 11-year-old or the 9-year-old Nate sitting in a Baptist church, hearing the preacher talk about it's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven. 9-year-old Nate's I don't want to be rich. Simple things, even when you're young, you don't understand context. You just hear things that catches your attention and you listen to the rest. And then you grab hold of one thing's limiting beliefs. And so these different things shape our entire experience, our entire existence, what we take on, all these expectations from family members and girlfriends and boyfriends or whatever you have, husbands and wives, these shape what you do next. And somebody has to come along and really help you break free to really chase after what you have potential to go after. And that's what I want the rest of my life to really be really dialed in and focused on, helping people break free. So everything I do, whether it's programs, courses, speaking, you name it, it's always going to have a laced feature of helping people break free.
Break free from what?
Holdbacks, limitations, mindsets, past, you name it, drama, trauma. I mean, that's it. And that's where there's all these pieces that go into that bucket of what we want people to break free from. But that's, if we can help people level up because they have all these limiting mindsets about the business, if we can help people take on that next risk because they've been so afraid because of certain things that were said to them, because every single time when people have fear or resistance or are stuck, there's always something holding them back further down. Inner 2-year-old comes out. Why? We go back down to wherever it started. And then we work to reframe it back here to really be able to move back forward and then take different actions moving for the rest of their life.
There's lots of different kinds of people that listen to the podcast, entrepreneurs, fractional executives, independent consultants, probably people that are thinking about consulting, but they haven't done it yet. And so they're still working at a company or figuring it out. In what way do you help different people? Like, I kind of want to give you a moment for self-promotion. If it's, like the mastermind, or is it the book? Like, what would you really direct people towards, and who is that person that you're looking to attract right now?
In the process, I think there's everywhere from one-on-one coaching that can have massive impact, but also a lot of it can be found inside of the group. We keep the mastermind at 15 people so that we can get real, we can get intimate, we can dive deep. And so each person has a different level of need. And sometimes it's like, Nate, I want to take fast, quick, swift action to move forward. And so some of those people, we start them in one-on-one coaching, and then we get them into a cohort of the Built Unstoppable to work alongside of that. And then other people, it's, hey, listen, we just stay on one-on-one coaching and we get them fast movement. And so I think the hard part is everybody has different resistance. And so, it's never a bad thing to reach out just to get a discovery call, because like I can't tell you how each person needs help until we get a hold of them. And that's where we do free discovery calls. Why? Because we want to make sure that we identify the exact need. We also identify, is this somebody that is fit for us and us fit for them? So then that way we can push them forward. Man, I have a great network of major player coaches. And it's like, sometimes it's like, hey, listen, like I can help you from here to here. And then I'm going to connect you with this coach that's going to help you in this exact space, because there's so much opportunity to go around. And when you have a people first mentality, then nothing else matters. Actually, funny enough, I was on a call with another coach. He's been an NFL coach. He's been a coach in the Canadian leagues, and he's a good friend of mine. And I had a discovery call with somebody, and then I connected him with that guy to be a coach for this guy. And then he basically kind of was like bragging about me, and we were just kind of like battling, trying to cross-sell each other versus our own self. It was like, okay, but that's when you care about people and you care about people actually getting help. That's the important part. And there's so many people out there that are doing things wrong in this space. And so we want to make sure that we do things right and really drive people to what can actually get them the right momentum in their life.
Yeah. And there's an integrity piece that really is coming through. As you said, I want to help someone. Of course, I want to grow my business, but my business will grow by helping people in the way that they truly need help. And that might mean referring them to another coach. Right. 100%. And it's not this selfless act. It's not about ego and looking good. Right. As you said, caring about, and I tell this comes up in the podcast a lot, the integrity piece, the doing the right thing piece, the, being patient around, if this isn't the right client customer for you, be honest about that. Yeah. Right. It will come back to you tenfold, but you got to be honest, even if that means short term, you're saying no to revenue or, potential.
100%. Yeah. And it's tough. It is hard sometimes saying, hey, listen, like we have the opportunity to serve, but we are not the best fit. The key is best fit, not a possible fit. And so that's really when you're dealing with that, it's who is the best fit in this situation? Is it myself? Is it one of our coaches? Or is it another coach that I know that's like, man, like this is right, exactly what they work on day in and day out. Let's get them with them. Once they work on that piece, they can come back to us and we can work on the rest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Nate, if people want to find you, whether they want that free consult call or interested in one of the programs you have, what's the best way to find you right now?
The best place is successwithnategreen.com. That's the best place to find me. And there is no E on my last name. It's just Green. So it's successwithnategreen.com.
Okay. And we'll link it in the show notes so people will be able to find it easily. Anything you want to leave our audience with before we end the podcast today?
I would say just the biggest challenge is, how are you showing up today as the true you? How are you living your life to the fullest today with what you have in front of you?
Okay. Amazing. Well, Nate, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, just sharing your journey, or at least a tiny part of your journey with us today. It's really enjoyable for me to learn about and listen to, and I'm sure our listeners will really enjoy it. So thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely.